Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down how a massive blizzard in New York City turned into a national political firestorm. We're talking the mayor's office, House Republicans, and even a former president all getting involved.
So let's get right into it. This is a story about crisis management, for sure. But it's also about how a totally local problem, clearing snow, can blow up into a national debate. It's a perfect example of what happens when local policy slams into our hyper-polarized political world. Okay, so before we even touch the politics, you have to understand the sheer scale of what the city was up against. This wasn't just a little snow day. We're talking about a truly historic, record-breaking storm. I mean, look at that number. Up to 2 feet of snow in some places. This was the first blizzard to hit New York since 2016. For any city, let alone one as dense as New York, that is an absolute logistical nightmare. And the impact was immediate. The city just ground to a halt. You had thousands of people without power, especially out in the Rockaways. Airports shut down. Travel became basically impossible. It was a serious, urgent situation for millions. So, with the city literally buried, how do you even begin to dig out? Well, this is where you see the full machine of a major city kicking into high gear. At the heart of it all was the Department of Sanitation, the DSNY. They were the tip of the spear. We're talking thousands of workers pulling these grueling 12-hour shifts around the clock to start clearing the roads. And get this, the amount of salt they had to use is just mind-boggling. 50 million pounds. Not bags, pounds, just to make the streets passable and deal with all that dangerous ice. The scale is just incredible. But the city's plan wasn't just about heavy machinery. They also fired up this long-standing program to hire temporary help, emergency snow shovelers, for $30 an hour. And this very practical, on-the-ground decision, this is where the political storm really starts to kick up. All right, so how on earth does a local snow shoveling gig become a target for some of the biggest names in Washington? Let's take a look at how this cleanup effort turned into a full-blown national debate. The first shot came from House Republicans. They latched onto the program's requirement for 2 forms of ID. And you can see the political play here, right? They immediately tried to connect it to the really hot-button issue of voter ID laws to score a point against Mayor Mamdani. But Mayor Mamdani's response was pretty straightforward. He basically said, whoa, hold on. This wasn't some new crazy rule. The city was just following federal employment law. The same standard procedure everybody has to follow to legally pay someone for work. And then the whole thing escalated. Former President Trump weighed in, questioning the very idea of asking people to help shovel. He framed it as some kind of failure by the city, saying, what the hell, even while adding he thought the mayor was a nice person. But if you actually look at the mayor's logic, it wasn't political at all. It was just practical. It was all about freeing up the full-time sanitation crews to handle the heavy machinery, giving a hand to property owners who have to clear their sidewalks anyway, and, actually getting the snow cleared instead of just ticketing people. And this really shows you the disconnect between the national political show and the reality of local problem solving. A mayor's job doesn't stop for a snowstorm. The city keeps running, and there are a dozen other crises happening at the exact same time. For instance, while all this was going on, at the very same time the city was digging out from the blizzard, Mayor Mamdani's team was also pushing ahead with a huge housing initiative. Their target? Bad landlords and unfair fees. They actually launched these public hearings called rental ripoffs. The whole idea was to go out into the community and get stories directly from tenants about what they were dealing with. That feedback was then meant to be used to write new, tougher regulations for landlords. And as if that wasn't enough, he was also navigating this other incredibly tricky issue, a proposed bill about protests near houses of worship. It's a classic leadership dilemma, right? How do you balance the right to worship peacefully with the fundamental First Amendment right to protest? It's a tough, tough balancing act. So it all leaves you with this big question about leadership today. In a world where any local decision can become a national headline in a heartbeat, what really matters more? The practical, on-the-ground work of solving a problem, or winning the never-ending battle over political perception?